Hello everyone, I'm Dave Percy, and thanks for joining us for Friday's edition of Alaska Weather. Up first, hazardous weather graphic. Winter weather advisory here for the Bering Strait coast on down to St. Lawrence Island continues until 6 p.m. this evening. Currently still here in mid-afternoon Friday, seeing winds gusting 50 miles an hour with visibilities down to a quarter mile at times from Tin City right on down into St. Lawrence Island today. And up here to the north along the Arctic coast, blizzard warnings out here until midnight on the west side there for whiteout conditions, winds gusting 50 miles an hour with additional snow, making it even a little bit worse there on the west side. Also the eastern Beaufort Sea coast, same thing, winter or blizzard warning out for until 6 a.m. Saturday morning, so hanging on a little longer there, but winds 40 to 50 or 35 gusts 50 miles an hour, and areas where the visibilities are down to a quarter mile or less up there today, and winter weather advisory out until 6 a.m. Saturday or through the night tonight for the central Arctic coast here. Winds or conditions not nearly as bad, looking for occasionally in some areas at times, could see visibilities reduced to a half mile and less in gusty winds creating due to blowing snow. Otherwise, satellite imagery shows low pressure here. Looks like slowly pulling to the northwest there. The front edging eastward, but the main push is off to the northwest here, along with this batch of moisture up through here. The bulk of precipitation kept it wet along the North Gulf Coast today, but breaking out here from along the southern Alaska range there up into the northern Kuskokwim Valley, and then some more clouds here over Bristol Bay and the Kuskokwim Delta, and then the cold air coming south and eastward here are coming in on the northwest winds over the Pribilof Islands. Actually, those winds gusting up to 50 miles an hour here along the northwest coast, turning north out of the northeast, northerly through the Bering Strait, northwest here in the Pribilofs. 40 to 50 miles an hour there, and right on down into the eastern Aleutians, where in Nikolsky had peak wind gusts of 62 miles per hour, and temperatures in the lower 30s. So we're getting some snow here in the eastern Aleutians, but wet snow, and a little chillier there up over the Pribilof Islands, but the amounts are pretty light here, and conditions improve. Still some snow shower action here over the central Aleutians. And then out there to the west, you can see the outer edge of the cirrus shield that's just now reaching Shimya, the precipitation producing clouds still off to the west and southwest there until this evening for the western Aleutians. And along the eastern Gulf of Alaska here, you can see this boundary pretty stationary and not too bad today, basically dry over the southeast coast. Quite a few clouds, looks like some clearing down there as well. And but this front over the eastern interior really breaking up. Some gusty winds through the Alaska range, maybe up to 35 miles an hour tops. And then, of course, the strongest winds up here along the Arctic coast. But rainfall amounts, as I mentioned, not too bad. You can see really not a lot of moisture with this feature like last week. Seward, Cordova, during the 12-hour period ending at 3 p.m. this afternoon, picked about 2/3 of an inch of precipitation. Portage Valley had their usual 2 inches, but again, not all that bad. And Kodiak had showers earlier, Kodiak City, and they ended earlier today. But you can see some breaks here. This front really going to pieces over the southwest interior area here. And then the tighter gradient up there to the north and the gusty winds, blowing snow, mostly blowing snow here, central eastern Arctic coast. And then some additional snows here from, say, Point Lay on down into the St. Lawrence Island area, right on down into the eastern Aleutians. Warm enough for rain showers over the Alaska Peninsula, temperatures in the lower 40s this afternoon, and over the southwest mountains and Kodiak, Iliamna, about 1/3 of an inch of rain today. And then there's that warm front just southwest of the western Aleutians, which tonight that whole system will push in. So look for gale force winds and rain to push into the western Aleutians, sliding over toward AKwx, the precipitation anyway, by morning, with the winds still back to the west. And conditions improving here quite a bit over the eastern Aleutians, winds dropping off, but not ending completely, but losing those stronger wind gusts and the snow shower activity becoming more infrequent, especially same is true for the Pribilofs. And not too bad up here over the Yukon-Kuskokwim Delta. Still some lingering showers along the Kuskokwim Delta coastline with this weak system here on down into the Alaska Peninsula. Chance of showers, Kodiak Island. This front continues to do a slow dissolve over the interior. Risk of snow showers or rain and snow showers here depending on the time of the evening, overnight period tonight up to the southern Seward Peninsula. And again, holding the blizzard warning along the Arctic coast, both west and east sides. And it looks like some precipitation. This frontal boundary will lift up into the southern central panhandle. It'll be the best chance of rainfall there. And rain or snow, depending on your elevation here and your proximity to the coastline, as well as the time of the overnight period tonight for the North Gulf Coast. But lighter amounts, that'll continue into tomorrow. Kind of this moisture stuck along the North Gulf Coast. Still have that southeast wind flow bring it up, but really the moisture source getting cut off, so amounts will be even lighter than today, and kind of a mostly cloudy, sort of showery day there for the Panhandle with light winds. And look for some sunshine to break out anywhere from the Copper River Basin, Denali Park, right up across the central interior, up at Tanana Valley, on out to the eastern Arctic coast, and much improved here along the Arctic coast and also over the northwest interior. Just some lingering flurries or snow showers. The trough keeps the chance of moisture along the southwest coast. And that storm out here to the west pushing the front eastward there, and it's starting to weaken already, but that'll push some rain to just west of the Pribilofs by late tomorrow. Rain from the eastern Aleutians coming into False Pass, maybe Cold Bay by tomorrow evening. And then we'll see on Sunday that center kind of tracks right up into the Russian Far East or toward the Bering Straits. Another round of snow and blowing snow coming in for the St. Lawrence Island area, Seward Peninsula into the northwest coast. But it doesn't look like it'll be all that serious. Snowfall amounts probably not that great. And then this portion really weak, milder temperatures. You can see south to north flow, keeping it mild. So that'll be in the form of rain. That could actually extend a little farther north than what I've drawn here. Strong high pressure builds in over the south central Alaska area, right over Prince William Sound, but moisture stuck underneath it. So still diminishing rain and showers in the form of rain or snow, mostly rain in the afternoon. And Panhandle looking pretty good, partly mostly clear, dry and light winds. And out to the west, another warm front with another system bringing rain into the Aleutians there and increasing winds, especially Sunday evening, overnight Sunday night. Low temperatures for tonight, shade below zero there for the Arctic coast and North Slope, teens in the Brooks Range, and 20s to the south to 35 to 40 there for the Tanana Valley around the Fairbanks area. And then back into the 30s here, south of the Alaska Range to Kodiak Island, 40 to 45 for the Aleutians, mid-30s, lower to mid-30s for the, for the Panhandle, 40 to 45, Aleutians, lower to mid-30s. Highs for tomorrow afternoon, 48 to 53 for the Panhandle, mid-50s Tanana Valley. Lows the following morning, not much different than Saturday morning, and then your highs pretty mild.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
On to first flying weather graphic here for Saturday morning. Big batch IFR here into the southwest coast, back out to the west and there Pribilofs northward to the Bering Strait. A little break here to the southwest and more moisture of the next storm coming into the southwest Bering and the Aleutians. And pretty good VFR here over the interior. IFR part of the North Slope in the Arctic coast, and IFR western Prince William Sound and along the eastern slopes of the western Alaska Range, and some marginal VFR in over the Panhandle. That's going to increase to some VFR here over the northern southeast coast, so conditions coming down a little bit there, but improving to the south. IFR kind of expands along the North Gulf Coast a little bit, persists in Prince William Sound. Marginal VFR, got a surge of moisture coming northward during the day tomorrow, so I'll spread it up in toward at least Isabel Pass here, but look for some improvement over toward Lake Clark and Merrill passes. VFR in the interior. on up to the north, almost all the Arctic coast, and some IFR here lingering along the southwest coast back up to the Bering Strait. Next band pushing eastward across the Bering Sea. And that continues Sunday morning right up to the southwest coast again, but really weakening here in the southern portion, but still some IFR with it. Good VFR breaking out behind that over the central Aleutians. Marginal VFR pushing into the Kuskokwim Valley. Another band of marginal conditions with some patches of IFR south of the Alaska Range, nothing too serious. VFR farther to the east and northeast, looking really good. Eastern Beaufort Sea coast, southern Panhandle. VFR marginal from Port Alexander on up into Lynn Canal. And then that breaks out to VFR in the afternoon Sunday from Yakutat all the way down, and some lingering marginal VFR due to that persistent southeast flow here along the eastern slopes of the Alaska Range, maybe even the southern slopes. Marginal VFR now losing the IFR, Prince William Sound, and some couple zones of IFR, southern slopes of the western Brooks Range in toward the Noatak Valley, here from the Seward Peninsula into the lower Yukon, Kuskokwim Valley and Delta areas, and a big batch IFR shoving up over the Aleutians. Anaktuvuk tomorrow, look for VFR flying conditions there. Will be some clouds, both for Anaktuvuk and Adigan, but will be of the VFR variety. And for Lake Clark and Merrill, marginal VFR, IFR on the eastern approaches, both passes improving throughout the day to marginal VFR into the afternoon. And for Rainy, probably won't see that improvement, staying IFR, eastern approach otherwise marginal, better to the west though. And for windy VFR, Isabel VFR becoming marginal in the afternoon, got a batch of moisture shifting on up to the north there, so coming down possibly in the afternoon to marginal VFR. Bentesta though staying VFR all day long. And for Tanita, could go back and forth, kind of right on the edge of the threshold for marginal VFR versus VFR tomorrow for that pass. And for Portage, another IFR day coming up, better on Sunday though. And for Chilkoot and White, marginal VFR becoming IFR late in the afternoon. Freezing levels here, 6,000 feet over the Yukon into the eastern interior, getting into a definitely a spring pattern here. And then cooler out to the west, 2,000 feet and lower surface just northwest of the Pribilofs. And the next system nudging some warmer air up over the western Aleutians. Icing, look for areas of considerable moderate here possible along that frontal boundary. Otherwise, it'll be mostly isolated moderate. And then same thing here for the North Gulf Coast. Could still see some considerable moderate possibly there, western Prince William Sound. Otherwise, that's scattering out on down the Panhandle. A jet stream here showing a trough well south of Kodiak Island, or actually an upper level trough low center. And pretty good jet coming down the back side of that to the south, back to the north, pattern we've seen quite often. Kind of a trough here wiggling up in that flow. And that'll bring a little bit of an increase in the moisture into southern Alaska, but up and over a developing ridge here over northwestern Canada. 9,000 feet, 15 to 25, strongest along the outer coast of the Panhandle. Much stronger this storm, 50 to 70 knots here, western Aleutians. Lighter in toward the southwest coast, 3,000 feet, 40 to maybe 55 knots, strongest out here over the west with that big storm. Lighter to the east here, 15 to 20 knot south-southeasterlies and 25 knots along the Panhandle, lighter toward the eastern border. Look for some areas of light to isolated moderate chop here for the southeast coast, North Gulf Coast, southwest interior, northeast Bristol Bay. And moderate chop pretty likely with those strong winds out over the central and western Aleutians. After the break, I'll be back with the marine forecasts.
Floating hundreds of miles from Earth, astronauts get a unique perspective of our planet. While they might recognize landmarks, space is the only place they can see the very edge of our planet's atmosphere.
From orbit, particularly looking at the horizon, did bring to mind how thin the atmosphere is. It's like an onion skin around this great big ball of the Earth.
This uppermost layer of Earth's atmosphere, the ionosphere, also overlaps with the very beginning of space. It's the job of NASA's new mission, GOLD, the Global Scale Observations of the Limmendisk Instrument, to study this region, a region that isn't just for astronauts to explore, but that affects humans every day down on the ground. For one thing, this layer of the upper atmosphere helps protect us from harmful radiation and energy emanating from the sun. But in our modern society, it does so much more. It affects the smartphone that sits in your pocket and the radio waves that guide our airplanes. The ionosphere is a crucial layer of the atmosphere through which our communications and GPS signals travel. And when this region changes, it impacts those communication signals. Changes can occur above this region from the sun's activity, also known as space weather. Changes can also occur below from Earth's weather, such as hurricanes and wind patterns. Gold connects the dots between how space weather and Earth's weather shape the upper reaches of the atmosphere. But this region isn't easy to study. The ionosphere spans roughly 60 to 400 miles from Earth's surface, which is too high for aircraft and scientific balloons, and the lower regions are too low to easily study with satellites. What are attainable, however, are the swaths of red and green light shining out from the upper atmosphere. Formed when the sun's rays hit atmospheric molecules, this light, named airglow, comes from green and red bands of glowing gas. Some of the airglow is invisible to our eyes, shining in infrared and ultraviolet light, which can only be seen with scientific instrumentation. Taking advantage of our planet's natural glow is gold. The gold instrument, which is about the size of a mini-fridge, is hitching a ride on a commercial communication satellite, SES-14. The satellite's orbit lies 22,000 miles above Earth, where it can record images in ultraviolet light to monitor changes in airglow across the globe. These images give information on the temperature, density, and composition of particles in the upper atmosphere. Gold collects these observations faster than any mission has ever done before. It captures an image of Earth's entire disk every 30 minutes, allowing scientists to see how the upper atmosphere evolves throughout the day. Gold joins a host of missions studying the very nature of space, around Earth, the Sun, and planets. As NASA ventures farther and farther from home, knowing the nature of space itself is crucial for our journey to understand our solar system and beyond.
There's a new class of chemical compounds impacting the Earth's ozone layer and raising concerns among some scientists. But a new NASA analysis indicates stratospheric ozone could actually be impacted more by climate change and the continued release of already banned chemicals. The Earth's ozone hole is showing signs of recovery, decades after the landmark agreement called the Montreal Protocol that banned many chemical compounds harmful to the ozone layer.
So we know the Montreal Protocol was a huge success. This was signed in the late 1980s when scientists and policymakers from around the world gathered together to try to save the ozone layer.
The chemicals they regulated persist in the atmosphere for many decades. They thin the ozone layer and they create a seasonal hole over Antarctica. They basically take away part of our planet's natural sunscreen, and that increases the risk of skin cancer and damage to plants.
Scientists have projected the ozone hole could disappear almost completely by about 2075, but several factors could delay that recovery.
There are some industrial compounds that are not banned by the Montreal Protocol, but as they enter the atmosphere, they will also hurt the ozone layer.
But the unregulated compounds have a short lifespan in the atmosphere, unlike the chlorofluorocarbons that were originally regulated. So they have a short-lived impact on ozone, and we don't think they'll delay recovery by more than a few years.
We project that by 2050, more than half of the ozone-depleting compounds in the atmosphere will come from long-lived substances banned by the protocol.
Because these compounds stay in the air for such a long time, compared to the unregulated, short-lived compounds, they will have a disproportionate and lingering impact on ozone. So any non-compliance with the protocol can have significant consequences.
And the really big uncertainty in ozone layer recovery is climate change. There are many naturally produced ozone-depleting substances that are emitted by the oceans. And as the oceans continue to warm due to climate change, those emissions will increase, and that will further delay ozone recovery.
Scientists want to better understand how climate change will affect ozone recovery.
This is a hard problem. As a scientific community, we need to work on this major issue. We now have a powerful new tool to simulate atmosphere and its interaction with land and ocean to study this issue. And that's what we're going to do.
How can you see the atmosphere? The answer is blowing in the wind. Tiny particles known as aerosols are carried by the air around the globe. This visualization uses data from NASA satellites combined with our knowledge of physics and meteorology to track 3 aerosols: dust, smoke, and sea salt. Sea salt, shown here in blue, is picked up by winds passing over the ocean. As tropical storms and hurricanes form, the salt particles are concentrated into the spiraling shape we all recognize. With their movements, we can follow the formation of Hurricane Irma and see the dust from the Sahara, shown in tan, get washed out of the storm center by the rain. Advances in computing speed allow scientists to include more details of these physical processes in their simulations of how the aerosols interact with the storm systems. The increased resolution of the computer simulation is apparent in fine details like the hurricane bands spiraling counterclockwise. Computer simulations let us see how different processes fit together and evolve as a system. By using mathematical models to represent nature, we can separate the system into component parts and better understand the underlying physics of each. Today's research improves next year's weather forecasting ability. Hurricane Ophelia was very unusual. It headed northeast, pulling in Saharan dust and smoke from wildfires in Portugal, carrying both to Ireland and the UK. This aerosol interaction was very different from other storms of the season. As computing speed continues to increase, scientists will be able to bring more scientific details into the simulations, giving us a deeper understanding of our home planet.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Well, this Friday's sea ice analysis showing it almost or closer in towards St. Matthew Island and then on down the coast here. New ice that's formed over the last couple of weeks, and over the weekend it's going to change with the southerly winds coming in. They're going to persist probably for several days. So this ice will obviously be going back to the north, and the new ice that's formed over the last couple of weeks will melt quite rapidly, and then shorefast ice actually will be coming off the south faces of the shoreline, heading or off the north faces, heading toward the south faces of shoreline. Anyway, moving on to coastal water forecast here. Small craft advisories out for the southeast coast tomorrow. Southeast 25, pretty uniform wind pattern, seas 14 feet. Southeast 25 also for Clarence Strait, 30 knots for Stevens Passage, 6-foot seas there, and 25 gusts 40 out of the south for Lynn Canal. And then on Sunday, much lighter, more swinging around to the north, light northerlies here over the inside waters at 10 knots with 2-foot seas, east-southeast 15 on the south coast, southeast 15 to 20 on the north coast, seas at about 10 feet. Prince William Sound, east 25 tomorrow, same thing for the eastern North Gulf Coast. And then lighter winds out of the east for the western zones and Barren Islands into Kemichak Bay. Light southeast winds at 10 and northeast 15 for Cook Inlet. Sunday, northeast 10 here for Cook Inlet. Southeast 15 continue. Barren Islands into Kemichak Bay. And east winds at 15 for the western North Gulf Coast around Middleton Island there in that zone. Southeast 20, east 15 for Prince William Sound. Kodiak Island, east side there, southeast 15, Shelikof Strait east at 15, and then Sitkinak to Castle Cape, southeast 20 knots. And then those southeast winds pick it up a little as you get into Bristol Bay. Small craft advisories there, but west turning northwest here across the Alaska Peninsula, 20 to 25 knots. And for the outlook on Sunday, southerlies 20 to 25 here for the Alaska Peninsula. Southeast 20 continue for Bristol Bay. And southwest of Akiak here through this zone, southeast 15. Lighter winds for Shelikof Strait and just east 15 there for the eastern zones of Kodiak Island. And for the western Aleutians, gales tomorrow coming in 40 knots from Kiska to Shemya and 35 knots here over toward Adak from Kiska and Amchitka. South 30 for the central Aleutians and south 30 knots, edging in toward Nikolsky, but Unalaska Island, west-southwest 25 to 30. And then on Sunday, lighter winds there for the Fox Islands, 15 to 20 knots, edging up toward 25 knots here as you get to the west side of Unimak Island. Central Aleutian southerlies 20 to 25, and 40 knot southwesterly gales continue out there in the west from Kiska Island to Shemya. Southwest coast, south of Nunivak Island, small craft advisory, southeast 25 knots. Small crafts also for the Pribilof, southerlies at 25, southeast 20 St. Matthew Island. East Norton Sound at 20 knots, turn northeast for St. Lawrence Island at 20 knots. And for the outlook on Sunday, southerlies, here come the southerlies, and 30 knots all along the southwest coast here, seas 9 to 10 feet, 25 knots for the Pribilofs, 30 knots for St. Matthew Island, right on up across St. Lawrence Island, southeast 30 for Norton Sound. And for the Beaufort Sea coast here, good gales continue for the east side there over toward Demarcation Point and Barter Island, 40 knots, 30 knots here to the central coast, falling back to 20 knots on the west side, and 15 knots, 15 to 20 from Cape Beaufort all the way down to Wales. Outlook for Sunday, southeast 30 knots, so brisk wind advisory is back in the picture in the forecast here from the Bering Strait up to Cape Beaufort, and then lighter winds here for the central and west side, southeast at 10, turning west-southwest at 10 for the eastern coast. And for tonight, this front really weakening and dissipating here, so the band of precipitation really becoming insignificant, and also lightening up on the rainfall here for the North Gulf Coast. Still chances of some moisture getting into Cook Inlet in the form of rain or snow depending on your elevation, and that extends along the North Gulf Coast, but to the north, dry. Blizzard warning continues for the Beaufort Sea coast until 6 a.m. tomorrow, and rain shifts into the pan and all but nothing heavy. And then tomorrow that thing dissipates as well, so leaving some showers, mostly cloudy skies behind. Still some areas of rain, mostly western Prince William Sound down to about Seward, Portage, dry to the north with increasing sunshine. Next system driving across the Aleutians, and that takes a track due north on Sunday with the next system approaching in the afternoon.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.